we were speaking at a convention, but I was the keynote speaker that particular morning. And I'm usually fairly composed because I love public speaking. I'm one of the few people that just love public speaking. But that morning, I wasn't feeling too good because I had spoken to this group probably 10 times, and I had a hole in my sermon. You know exactly what I mean by a hole in the sermon, where you need a story or you need something there, and it ain't there. And they've heard everything. So I'm pacing back and forth, and she says to me, why don't you, what's going on? And I said, well, I need a story. She goes, what kind of story? I said, I need a story about a healing of somebody who was, kind of resentful and had a bad. Oh, she says, you need to tell my favorite story that my dad tells. I said, oh, well, I've never heard what your favorite story is that your dad tells. She goes, oh. She says, it's about this guy. Now I've got like 2 minutes before they introduce me. Of course, that's when this always happens, right? 2 minutes before I'm being introduced, we're in the green room. There's an arena full of people, and she starts to tell me the story. She said, we were church planners. Her and her family were church planners down in Paraguay. They had church every night. It was Sunday through Monday in a tent, and this guy came every night in a wheelchair. So they wheel him down every night. They pray for him every night, and after a month and a half, he doesn't get healed. So my father-in-law, she's telling me, my father-in-law, he's an optimist, right? He comes off the platform and he asks the guy, he says, what are you going to do when the Lord heals you? And he puts the microphone in the guy's face. And the guy says, I'm going to go home, I'm going to get my gun, and I'm going to shoot the guy who put me in this wheelchair. Now I got 30 seconds left, right? And I'm on the edge of my seat. Like, wow. I said, what happens next? And she goes, oh, I don't remember. You're going to have to call my dad. I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? She goes, yeah, I can't. It's all fuzzy, but you need to call my dad. It's an excellent story. I'm like, fine. So I pull out my cell phone, and I call my father-in-law, and I said, hey, now they've lived too many years in Latin America. They're no longer gringos, right? See, if you're just a gringo, I just call you and say, hey, how'd this story end? And boom, you tell me because you're a gringo, right? But if you're a Latin, no, you can't just do that. You gotta go way around the bend before you even get to the point. You gotta ask them how their kids are. You gotta ask them how their family is. You gotta ask them all the questions of protocol before you even get close to the point. So I go through all the protocol as fast as I can, covering all the grandkids and everything else. Finally, I said, I got to know how the story ended in Paraguay. What story? I said, the story of the guy who got healed in the wheelchair. What kind of wheelchair? There are lots of guys in wheelchairs. Like the guy who's going to shoot the guy. He goes, oh, yeah, that was a great story. Like man, I'm going to be introduced to speak. I just need to know how it went. He goes, oh, he says, well, when he told me that he was going to shoot the guy who put him in the wheelchair, I said, well, that's exactly why the Lord hasn't healed you. I also told him that if he didn't forgive the guy who put him in the wheelchair, that he was going to stay in that wheelchair. You got to forgive and let go of that resentment. He said it took the guy a week and a half. It took that word a week and a half to penetrate his heart. He said after a week and a half, he finally decided to forgive the guy, and 3 days later, he got up and began to walk perfectly normal and well. You got to let go of your bitterness. Got to let go of your anger. People of great faith do not hold on to bitterness. They do not hold on to anger. People of great faith have an attitude of gratitude.